Okay.
And so whenever I have any like object up here, for example, like saying the light coming pretty much down the center, and so I wanted kind of like to have it like pretty much in the center of the face, and then it comes back down right here, and it's pretty much in the center. And I don't want to make it too straight either. Sometimes this is kind of where I take artistic liberties. Um, like if it was like perfectly in the center, then it would be just really kind of this super symmetrical type feel of the lighting. But when you have it off to kind of like focal points, it really can create some interest. Even with like some of my rim lighting, I kind of just do it for framing opposed to actual, like that's how light works. Um, I think when you make a painting, you should always think about the overall feel and making it something that's impressive to look at and something that's it feels real, but doesn't necessarily mean it is real. That's
Hmm.
something that I remember when I went to Comic Con. I remember listening to one of the Pixar panels, and they were describing like how people come up to them and say, "Hey, like your movies feel so real. Your characters are so like amazingly realistic." And they said, "Well, honestly, they're not. Like if you were to stop frame by frame and look at the characters, like like stretching and squashing, and like doing crazy stuff that never exists. Their proportions like are off, really like exaggerated. But it's because of this kind of caricature of emotion and personality that really makes it feel real. I always think it's kind of cool to be a painter because you're kind of like a magician. You're showing someone a magic trick, and when they look at your painting, they're like, "Wow, like how did you do that?" Like once I show you, then it's not so much of a magic trick anymore, right?
Hmm.
But but that's the idea. Like you want to show like someone, hey, look at this, and like, oh wow, I believe that exists, and that's really the most important aspect of painting, in my opinion. And having understanding how light and form really works is important because you can get away with a lot more stuff if you understand how it actually works. If you don't, then obviously you're going to be guessing more so than actually having a strong opinion.
Okay.
And
And
so, yeah.
in your class, are you going to be talking, or what kind of things will you be talking about?
So I want to really explain to people that not just painting a picture is important, but understanding creativity is really important too. Uh, Whenever I'm working, I'm surrounded by lots of creative people. Like everyone I'm next to is super creative. Like they're coming up with some amazing stuff that I'm like, wow, why didn't I think of that? You know? And it's never really like, I mean, their paintings are obviously really awesome. That's like hands down, no question about it, right?
Hmm.
But what really impresses me is like, man, that would be really cool. I can't wait to play that. I can't wait to fight that boss, or I can't wait to hold that weapon. It's never like, oh, that's a really good painting. It's always like, ah, oh, that's a cool like monster, dude. Like, I can't wait to see that in the game. And that's something that I think my employers at least really look for, is someone that can come up with like some cool ideas, something that people want to ride, people want to fight, people want to run around in. And when I was going to school, I was never taught that. I was taught just how to paint. I was taught like, okay, you follow rules A, B, and C, and you'll be all right.
Hmm.
And I was like, what about rule D, rule Z? What about all these other things that are obvious, you know, that exist? And they're like, oh no, don't worry about that. Just paint. And I'm like, okay.
Hmm.
And so in the class, hopefully, I want to get people to start recognizing that it's not all about just having great painting skills, but it's also ability to have really awesome stuff that people want to be like a part of.
Okay, so you're going to also be working on the actual idea with the people as well as the technical aspects, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Uh, So, you know, when I'm working at my studio, like the cool thing is that they're really lenient about like idea making. Like sometimes they'll come up to me and say, "Hey, you need to come up with like a monster that has armor," and then that'll be it. And I'm like, "Awesome," and then I can just really come. like full frontal with like my designs and come up with some crazy like okay, this is what I was thinking. You know, this guy has crazy red armor and it like flies and stuff, and he shoots lava out of his eyeballs. You know, I can just get really crazy with it. And they're like, okay, first of all, the eyeball lava stuff is just kind of ridiculous, but we like the flying armor. You know, and it's kind of a nice back and forth. But then on the opposite end, they also will be like, hey, we want like a very specific thing. So just draw this. And that's fun too. Because then that's more like, okay, I'll just render it really, really well. And you know, at the end of the day, I'm just drawing pictures, so it's a lot of fun. I don't really complain too much.
Hmm. Okay. And do you ever collaborate, like somebody's drawing and you paint it, or vice versa?
Sometimes that happens very rarely. It's usually like when something needs to be done quickly, and one person probably swamped on a bigger priority, but then another priority really needs to be taken care of. So even though they started it, someone else could pick up the slack to
Hmm.
kind of help out with production. It's more of like aiding each other to get stuff done quickly, so we can move on to other stuff that also have priority.
Oh, okay. Um, yeah, there's a few more layers. Did you want to talk about any of those layers?
Yeah, just you can go into a little bit more. There's just a few more. They're pretty much the same. Like so, what happens after this layer is I start fixing the proportion and anatomy, and I start like making the design a little bit more um, has a little bit more unity. Originally, it was kind of like too chaotic, too violent, and I noticed the foreshortening on this was kind of awkward too.
Hmm.
So I started kind of changing stuff a little bit.
Okay.
And then as I go further up, it's just more proportions and more of just like rendering and detailing like some of the features that I want people to focus on. And more of that's on when I go up layers. But the interesting thing and the thing I want to point out is that, you know, from this line drawing to kind of like my final, the things that I really liked about the original drawing
Uh-huh.
stayed in the final drawing pretty much.
Mm.
And I did deviate, but I did keep to the general theme of what I was doing. It was kind of like this, like monster with armor, like this dragon feathered monster with armor. And so that's kind of what happens towards the end. And if I would have just started from scratch, like I don't know where this would have been. It could have started like something completely different from what the final would have ended up as. And that kind of is lame because if I need to stay directed, like my director is like, hey, you need to do this, um, I can definitely like go on tangents with my own paintings. Just the way that I do in conversation. Like I go on tangents all the time, just talking to people. So my paintings reflect that. So whenever I was teaching, I would do that all the time. So what I did was I made bullet points. So the bullet points for me is like the early sketch in my painting. Otherwise, if I don't have any sketch in the painting, then I'm just going to go on tangents. It's going to start off as a bird and then end up as like a person, like a human with a
Hmm.
gun.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so put down your bullet points of the most important things that you want to have in your creature, or the feeling that you want from your creature. Um, do a nice tight, or a loose drawing, but don't think that that's the be all end all of it.
Uh-huh.
And then start incorporating your colors in there, not really being too concerned about the saturation or the tone, but just the idea itself.
Absolutely.
And then you're dealing with lighting and texture and adjusting from there as well,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Okay,
Uh,
cool.
yeah, you nailed it. Like I was saying, like it's just the way that I have conversations. It's the same thing. So right now, this I feel like this is kind of my this painting in all. Oops, zoomed in too far. This painting in general is kind of like my bullet point for this interview.
Hmm.
Otherwise, I would also go on tangents to this interview.
Okay, cool. So, um, and then you in your class, you're going to be walking the students through all this. The ones that take the full class, they will get paint overs from you. They'll see you painting over top of their creatures and explaining why you're doing this, why you're doing that. And the course is how many lessons? It's 9?
Yeah, it's nine.
Okay, cool.
And it's going to
Awesome.
be great. Sorry, it's going to be great because like I colored this, sketched this. I did like a lot of things, and in the class, each lesson you guys made it like break down so I can like, okay, this is just all about sketching, and so it's going to really, I think it's going to really help people out, especially if they can rewind and watch it over and over, um, and the whole paint over stuff too as well. They can watch it over and over. I think that's awesome way of going about it.
Yeah, there is a lot to take in from this image, and a lot of people might look at it and go, "Wow, this is really, hardcore," and how can I do this in 2 hours? But the thing is that the course is designed so it's very focused on certain aspects of the process over a certain amount of weeks, so you won't lose anybody.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? I want to comment on the 2 hour painting thing too.
Sure.
Um, there's a story of Picasso. I don't know if this is true or if this is rumor, but it's still a cool story and it makes sense. Well, Picasso was like, everyone knows Picasso being was an amazing artist. Even though you may have saw some of his like surreal and like abstract stuff, he was actually a really good painter in general. And one day, some lady came up to him and was like, "Hey, can you do a portrait of me? Like, I'll pay you like X amount of dollars. Like, please, I would love a like original Picasso. You don't have to spend all day on it or anything. You just do like a real quick sketch." And then he's like, "Okay." And so he spent like 30 seconds on this sketch, and then gave it to her. And she was amazed. She's like, "Oh my God, this is so like realistic. It looks just like me. I can't believe you only did this in 30 seconds." And then he looked at her and he said, "Oh no, it took me actually 30 years." And I thought that's really profound and it makes a lot of sense. Like, so when I say it took me 2 hours, in reality, it took me like the 4 years that I've really dedicated to this craft. I really practiced and practiced and practiced and draw like every day. Even today, I still draw nearly 12 hours a day.
Hmm.
And it has nothing to do with me just being a fast painter. It's just I've learned a lot of different shortcuts. I've watched lots of different videos. I've really mastered some of the techniques that I use. You know, it has everything to do with that, opposed to just me being like really like this talented person. It really comes down to me being a person that just dedicated a lot of time into painting. And I truly believe that anyone can really paint. It just takes that time and effort.
Right on. Well, if this is the end of the demo, why don't we switch it back to the camera
Okay,
and we'll
great.
continue our little
Let's see if we can get
conversation
this
here.
back on. All right, there you go. We're back.
Okay, let me just adjust my camera here. Cool. Well, thank you very much for the demo. That was awesome. I look forward to watching your videos and learning your techniques and everything, because that's what I do too. I watch everybody's lessons. Um,
Of
so
course.
I want to get a little background on you. What kind of home did you grow up in? How many siblings? Where did the interest of art come from? Can we talk about your earlier days?